Alright, this is Duke with a video about geofences. Unfortunately, this video I recorded into the assignment, I didn't get any audio. So thank you for pointing that out. One of the students pointed that out to me. So we are re-recording this video to get audio this time, which will hopefully be more helpful than watching it without any sound. Anyways, in this assignment, you're working with geofences. And geofences, which you've probably heard of before in the context of drones, are basically just, virtual, we could say, or invisible fences that prevent the drone from going somewhere or keep the drone inside somewhere and keep it from going too far away or going outside of the area it's supposed to be in. So the video I'm making right now will replace this link right here. And then you want to make sure before you start this assignment that your RTL or Smart RTL, which are both things you should have tested already in class, and your failsafe working correctly before using geofences. We just want to make sure as we get into more autonomy in our flight activities that we have a failsafe working so that if our copter does have an issue, it can fail in a predictable way, in a safe way, and not cause damage or injury to anybody or anything like that. So we're going to go over that real quick and then we'll jump into some of the geofence setup and things like that. I have Mission Planner open with a simulated copter, which I'll use to demonstrate some of these geofences. But before we do, let's do the failsafe setup. So if we go into Setup, Mandatory Hardware, and you go into Failsafe, okay, make sure your props are not on the plane or quad. Okay. And here we have our radio failsafe, which is kind of the one I'm talking about, but also we'll look at battery failsafe as well. So if we lose link for some reason with our radio, what do we want the copter to do? Okay, enable always RTL is kind of the default safe thing to do. I also like Smart RTL, so you could change it to Smart RTL if you wanted to. That would be fine as well. And then you have a battery failsafe, which many of you probably have not set up. So let's go ahead and set that up as well. And we can again choose Smart RTL or RTL. Okay, so there's other options in here, like just land in place wherever it's at, just RTL or Smart RTL or land, different things you can do. But I'm going to just recommend one of these kind of typical options, a RTL type option. And that means if our battery gets too low, determined by these cutoff values here, the aircraft will RTL. And if we lose link with our radio, it will also RTL. You can enable a GCS failsafe, but I wouldn't recommend that because a lot of you fly without your GCS or your ground control station mission planner is not connected to the vehicle all the time. A lot of you just fly with your radio sometimes. So I wouldn't enable this. This just allows you to do a failsafe action if you were to lose telemetry radio link, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's make sure I'm not muted here again. Just a quick check. Okay. All right, so we're going to have our battery failsafe, our radio failsafe, and then we're going to leave the GCS failsafe unchecked. We don't want to use that right now. So let's go over into the assignment. Okay, so we've done this first step here. Make sure those are working correctly. You also, in terms of making sure RTL is working correctly, you want to make sure that you've flown flight tested that, if that makes sense, not just set it up, but you should have flight tested that in an earlier assignment. So we will now jump into the geofence segment of the video. There's a couple different geofences, and I'm asking you to test at least 3 of these types or variations of geofences. And if you go to this web page here, it gives you kind of the lowdown on the entire geofence situation for Arducopter, which is what we're using. Okay. We have these types of fences I talked about last week a little bit: cylindrical fences, polygon fences, and then we have inclusion and exclusion regions, which is related to polygon fences. But there's also min and max altitude fences, which are not explicitly listed here but are available. Okay. General setup down here, we have a lot of these fence parameters, which we'll look at in a second. And some notes down here. We have some default fence type. So pay attention to the stuff that's for copter, since that's what we're using here. And we have a couple other links for specific types of fences, like a cylindrical fence. Okay. There's a whole page about this. I would highly recommend you review this before you just go out and send it. Okay. They have inclusion and exclusion fences. Okay. I'm not going to go through every point on these pages because, of course, they're there for you to read. But there's also a nice table here which tells you what types of fences are available for which vehicle type, basically. So again, we're using a copter, so that's our column there. Okay. We have fence breach actions. Okay, and we want to go to copter actions. Okay. So this is important because what happens when we breach a geofence or when we hit a geofence or get close enough to it or whatever it is, there are some specific things our aircraft can do. And so this table helps understand what the parameter fence action will determine for copter. And that's what we're dealing with. And when they have these different options like this, there's a little note down here that's really helpful. Okay. If there's a slash RTL slash hold or RTL slash land or break slash land, it's going to try to do the first action first. And if it can't do it for some reason, like it doesn't have a GPS fix for some reason all of a sudden, then it will try to perform the second action. Okay. Most of them just have two choices. This one happens to have three. So it's going to try to smart RTL. If it can't smart RTL for some reason, it's going to RTL. If it can't RTL for some reason, it's going to try to just land where it's at, which doesn't require GPS. The land flight mode doesn't. So that's pretty much always going to work, unless something goes terribly wrong. But that's why there's these slashes here. So when you choose fence action parameter, say you set it to 3, that's going to choose these actions in this order left to right. Okay, so pay attention to these notes here. These are important. That's of course why they're in different categories and things like that. And basically, these are a lot of the parameters we're going to go over. But one other thing we'll talk about is enabling a fence with a switch. So setting a switch on your transmitter to flick the switch, turn the geofences on, turn the geofences off. Just for testing, it's nice to have it be able to turn it on or off in the air. If you find that the geofences are working how you want and you just want them set up all the time, then you can just leave them on. You can remove this option to toggle them with a switch and use the switch for something else if you'd like. Okay. Down here we have a couple notes for the altitude type fences. Okay. If you are in copter, which we are flying a copter here, if you were to set a fence out minimum limit, then that limit would be disabled in landing modes. Okay, so landing type modes like RTL or things like that. So if you set a minimum altitude, like I don't want my copter to go below, say 50 feet above the ground, then of course if you're going to land the aircraft, you need to be able to go through that fence, that minimum altitude fence, so it will be automatically disabled in a landing mode, like land, or I would assume RTL would be in there as well. And for polygon fences, copter will stop increasing altitude at the fence out max parameter in loiter, position hold, and altitude hold modes, which all have altitude control. So again, just some of these notes here will help you understand the behavior that you should be seeing when you go out and test this. So you're not going like, well, what's going on? Why isn't it doing that? If you read through this, then you'll get a lot of those notes and understand why what's happening is actually happening. Down here, there's some instructions on how to enable fences, kind of what we're going to go over in this video. These videos might be just fine too. I haven't actually watched through these recently, or I don't know if I've ever watched through those. But we're just going to go through it more relevant to our assignment, I guess you could say. And so that's why I'm making this video. Some of the screenshots are a little bit dated, but there are most of the things here are still in this pretty much the same spot in Mission Planner as they appear in the screenshots. Okay. So let's go back up here. Yeah, let's go back up here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump into Mission Planner and cover some of these fences. So let's go over to Mission Planner here. Go to our data page. So I'm connected to my simulated vehicle. We're out at our flight location. Okay, and I want to go through enable fences first of all, set up some fence parameters, and then enable a switch on my transmitter to control the fence. Okay, I already have this set up in this copter, but we'll go ahead and look at it anyways. So if you search for fence in the full parameter list, oops, my radio, and you go fence underscore, you get a bunch of fence related parameters here. Okay, and the first one here, fence enabled or disabled. Okay, you want to set that to enabled. Now mine's on a switch, so that's why it's showing 0 right now. But you can go ahead and enable that. Okay, and write params. Okay. And if you don't see the other parameters related to fence yet, then wait till after you write enable to on, write the params, and then refresh your parameters over here, and you should see all the rest of these other parameters. Okay. So let's go just from the top of the list here. Fence action. What do we want the vehicle to do when it breaches a fence or breaks a geofence? Okay, like I showed you earlier, there are a couple different things you can do. I chose Smart RTL or land. Okay, so that's what action should be taken when the fence is breached. My fence altitude max, I just set it to 100 meters, which is 300 something feet. I figured that was fine for purposes of the demonstration. Okay. Fence altitude minimum, I didn't turn that on that on for the demonstration. Right now you can see it's set at -10, which is essentially turned off. You can test that out if you'd like, and of course you want to set it to a value that is reasonable. Okay, um, values really close to the ground may or may not be observed very well just because of the terrain of the ground, and where you took off from is your home point. That's your zero altitude, and it's going to reference. So it just should be a relatively high off the ground there, if that makes sense. Just not something really low. It might not perform as you think if you set it too close to the ground. We already set fence enable. Fence margin, okay, so distance the autopilot should maintain from the fence to avoid a breach. So it's kind of like your buffer margin, like it says. 2 meters is about 6 feet or so. So that's pretty good. When you're in modes like loiter and you're trying to fly into the geofence and loiter, the copter's just not going to go any further and is going to be stopping around this amount of distance between it and the fence. So it'll stop about 2 meters before the fence is actually in place if you're flying in a mode like loiter. Okay. Fence radius. Okay, this is a circle fence. We talked about circle fences briefly. A circle fence is just a big tin can that pops up when you turn it on from your home or takeoff location, and it has a big tin can around you. So say it's 150 meters. So 150 meters in any direction from where you take off from typically would be a geofence if you have this enabled. Okay. Fence total, we don't update this manually, okay? Just like it says, this helps save how many vertex points, I believe, are saved to the vehicle when we draw a fence on the map. And then fence type here, this one's a bit mask. So these are the fences that are configured for the copter. I'm just going to have all three of these configured so I can show them to you in one single demonstration. But if you want to test one type of fence at a time, then you can deselect certain options and only have, say, the polygon fence enabled, or only have the circle fence enabled if you wanted to, or vice versa, whatever you want to do there. That will set the bit mask and then write those parameters. Okay, so let's do the second half of this now. We have some fence parameters set. We're going to go into RC6 option, and that is because I have a switch on my transmitter that's set to channel 6. You may have a switch set to channel 8 or 9 or 10 or 7 or whatever it is. So not everyone's going to do 6, but just realize 6 is the channel that I have on my transmitter set up to control this. Okay. So you can see I've set fence enable, okay, to be RC6 option. So channel 6 on my transmitter is set to a switch, and I flip the switch, and it tells the flight controller to enable the geofences or to disable the geofences if I turn it off. And that's all we need to do there. So we'll write params there. Okay. Now we'll go over to the data page, and if we look at the messages, you can see some already here, but if I flip the switch, we see fence high, flip it back, fence low. So my switch turns the geofences on or off. Okay. Let's go ahead and before we take off in flight, I want to show you all the fences in one flight. Let's go into the plan page. Okay. You'll see here I've drawn some geofences. Oops, zooming in on this page is always difficult. There we go. Okay, so right now I'm on the plan page, but I'm in the mission tab up here at the upper right. I actually want to go down to the fence tab, and that allows me to draw geofences. Now don't just ignore this pop-up. I know you're probably used to ignoring pop-ups sometimes, but it says please use the polygon drawing tool to draw inclusion and exclusion areas. Once drawn, use the same icon to convert it to an inclusion or exclusion fence. Say okay. So that's telling us how to draw fences as we're in the fence menu. Okay, and this is the polygon tool it's talking about over here on the left-hand side. So you can see right now my copter's inside this area. Kind of just tried to simulate our flight area, right? So right there, and I've drawn these two fences. Now they're different colors, so why is that, right? Well, if we look down here, I've drawn two different types of fences. Let's expand this out. We have some polygon vertex inclusion fences, right? And then we have some polygon vertex exclusion fences. So remember, an inclusion fence includes the area that you want the copter to be in. An exclusion fence says, no, the copter cannot go in this area. It's excluded. I don't know if that helps remember it or not. But basically what I've drawn, as you might guess, is an inclusion fence here around the outside. So I want the copter to stay inside this bigger area. But I don't want the copter to go inside this small area. Let's say there's a barn or something right there. I don't want to fly over the barn. But I want it to stay inside this overall area. Okay. So again, this pink one here is an inclusion fence, and the red one here is an exclusion fence. And if we go over to our data page, we can also see those on our main page. So if you're flying with telemetry on your computer and everything, we'll zoom out a little more there. Okay, you'll be able to see these fences, live while you're flying. That's not just on the plan page, it's also on the data page. Okay, so let's just experiment a little bit and draw a couple more fences so you can get the idea of what I tried to do here. Okay, so let's say my copter, I want to draw another a secondary fence for some reason, but let's just use this for demonstration purposes. We'll click on the polygon. We'll say draw polygon. I'm going to draw like this. Okay, so I drew a polygon. All right, there's my shape. Whatever, it can have as many points as you want. You can move them around and stuff like that, and make whatever shape you want. Once you've drawn it, then you want to go back over to this tool and say fence inclusion or fence exclusion. Now in this scenario, the copter is right here, so it would make sense for this to be an inclusion fence. If I made an exclusion fence when the copter is already inside of it, then it would probably prevent me from taking off. So I'm going to say fence inclusion, and now it turns that pink color, and we know that's an inclusion fence. So right now I have two inclusion fences. I don't really need two of those, but just for the sake of example, that we drew another one there. Okay. And let's say there's another area over here that I want the copter to stay away from. So I'm going to draw a polygon. Let's say there's a bunch of grain silos in a row right here or something. Okay. And then I'm going to go back over here and hit fence exclusion. Okay, now it turns red. And if we go make this a little bit bigger here, we'll be able to see we have a bunch of these fence inclusion and fence exclusion items here. Okay, just like with waypoints in an autonomous mission, which we looked at a little bit before in our software in the loop assignment, you can edit these in some ways. Now it's a little bit different than mission items, but let's say you drew too many points on one of these fences for some reason. You can just hit delete and delete one of these points off the fence. Okay, or if you just totally made a mistake, you want to delete a bunch of them, you can do that. If you want to just clear the entire page, let me bring this back down. Oops. Okay, you can right click on the map and say clear mission, and everything's gone. Okay. If you do that on accident or something that you already saved to your copter, you can get it back. If you didn't save it anywhere, then you're going to just have to redraw it. I'm going to go ahead and read from my copter again. There we go. Our original fences come back since I already saved them to my copter. Speaking of, once you draw the fences, you'll want to write them to your vehicle. Okay, and then I recommend reading them back. It will say this will clear your existing points. That's fine because it's going to read it back what's on the copter. Okay, and it's exactly what it should be. That's fine. If you'd like to save them on your computer ahead of time as kind of a backup, you can also do that. Just save file over here, and it will save it as, I'm going to say Geofence. Okay, save. And now it's saved on our computer. And if we wanted to draw this ahead of time when we're not connected to our vehicle, we could draw it ahead of time the night before, save it on our computer. The next day, open up, connect to Mission Planner with our vehicle, and load file, and load it in. And it would then load up on the screen, and we could then write it to our vehicle and read it back and make sure it's what we want it to be. So hopefully that helps get you through this page. Okay, it looks like a mission plan, but it's actually in the fence tab. Okay. And then we'll go, back over to the data page, and we'll test out some of this geofence. Okay, so we're going to go to messages, and we're going to just make sure we can arm the vehicle, and I'm going to take off and try to breach various fences. Okay, we'll see if we can fly into the fence, the polygon fence, inclusion, the exclusion. Then I'll see if I think I can get far enough away inside the inclusion fence to breach the circle fence as well, I believe. It was 150 meters, so I think that would be enough space. You won't be able to see the circle fence on the map. I don't know of any way to do that. You just have to remember it's whatever distance you set from your home point. So in my case, it's 150 meters. So from wherever I start from, 150 meters out in a big circle will be my circular geofence. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and arm this. We're in stabilized flight mode right now. And let's make sure we can change modes, auto, later. Okay, good. All right, we're going to go ahead and arm. Okay, and we're going to take off in stabilize mode. Okay. And we're going to fly into the inclusion fence here just off to the north. And I want you to watch what happens. What? Nothing happened. I'm going way higher than 100 meters. Okay. So what happened? I didn't turn my fences on, so nothing happened. My switch on my geofence is not high, it's low right now, so nothing happened. So let's go back inside the fence. Okay, we'll lower altitude. I'm flying way too high. This is a simulated vehicle. I'm not breaking regulations. Okay, let's decrease our altitude a little bit here, down below 100. Okay, right out there maybe or so. See if we can get a good hover. It's always hard to fly and stabilize in the sim, I feel like, because you don't have any reference of besides the altimeter. Okay, so right around there, we're going to go ahead and flip my switch. Fences are now high. Oh, I'm going to break the max altitude fence. Oh, I just barely okay, almost broke it. Trying to break the lateral fence first. So let's fly forward again in stabilized flight mode. The geofences are high. And what happens when we hit the fence? Fence breach. Okay. Let me see, it goes into Smart RTL. I breached the boundary fence. So it's bringing the vehicle back. It's using Smart RTL. And it's going to bring it back and do an RTL, but it's doing a Smart RTL, so it's following my path back. Okay. If I want to get out of the RTL function for some reason, I'm like, oh, oops, I breached the fence, but I want to keep flying. I can toggle my flight mode switch and go back into my other flight mode, in this case, stabilize. Okay. Sorry, the computer's talking in my headphones, so it's okay. There we go. And so let's go ahead and breach our max altitude fence. We're just going to climb straight up. It should be at 100 meters. We should breach it. There we go. Okay. It took over max out smart RTL. All right, and we can see the messages there. It's going to smart RTL my vehicle again. It's just going back down to where I took off from. Okay. I'm going to toggle flight modes again. Okay. I should be back in stabilize. Okay, we're going to go ahead over here, and I can fly this stable enough to not crash into the ground. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. All right, we're going to go over towards this exclusion fence. See if I can keep it under control and stabilize mode in the sim here. There we go. Okay, I hit the boundary of the fence. All right, and so again, we can't go inside that area of the exclusionary fence. So same thing happens, smart RTL, and we're back to RTLing back to where we took off from. Okay, let's go ahead and try loiter mode. Okay, and we're going to try to breach this circle fence. I need to get far enough away from the takeoff point. And it won't really show me anything if I'm in loiter mode because I'm not going to actually be able to breach the fence. It's just going to kind of sit there and bounce off the fence, basically. It looks like I may be reaching that already. I can't move to the side at all. So you can imagine a 150 meter circle from my home point here. And right now I'm full right stick to the right and kind of down, and it's not moving anywhere. So I'm hitting that circular fence. And I'm in loiter mode, so it's not going to do anything and alert me at all because I'm not actually breaching the fence. I'm just flying up towards this wall and pushing on the wall, basically. Okay, so let's climb a little bit, and I will try to... Oh, I wonder, you know what? I bet that's why earlier when we went over towards the exclusionary fence, it seemed like it breached over here. I bet we hit the circle fence before we hit the exclusionary fence. That's why it breached so soon. But you get the idea anyways. But if I'm in loiter, I can't breach any of these fences. It just won't let me. I'll just bump up against them, and that's pretty much all I can do. Let's get close to this fence we can actually see here. And it's just going to sit there on the edge of the fence, or at least it should. Yep, kind of sitting there on the fence. I have full right stick forward right now, trying to go forward, and you can see from the artificial horizon that it's not going forward, and the drone is not moving at all. So that is a good example there of loiter mode. which will not let you breach the fence, and then a different mode like stabilize, which will let you breach the fence, and then we'll give you the fence breach behavior. So let's go back over here. When you do the assignment, I want you to set up and test a cylindrical geofence as well as an inclusion and exclusion geofence. You can set that up to your advantage to do all three in one flight, basically. You might want to change things a little bit from what I did here because my circular geofence was actually shorter than the distance from my home point to the exclusion fence. That was my bad. I should set this up a little bit closer to home. But hopefully you get the idea there, and that helps you understand how to run these three types of fences. You want to submit a data flash log as well as a screenshot of the log in a log viewer for the assignment. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, make sure your RTL and failsafe are working before you use geofences so we don't have any unexpected behavior after we breach a fence. All right, thanks.